Hello everyone, my name is Maura Hoban, and I am going to be presenting cell phone use around the world, and is it contributing to cognitive decline? Do you remember when every grade school teacher told us to memorize your times tables? How about long division? Anybody use that anymore? Do you remember when your grade school teacher told you you're not going to be carrying a calculator around with you everywhere you go? Well, we've certainly proven that theory wrong. But don't anyone go running and let the math department know about that. Or should we? We live in an age of information technology. Through the internet and related devices, we have been granted quick and reliable access to the vast sources of information. If you consider yourself an average smartphone user, you check your phone at least 110 times a day. Our phones have become more than just a telephone these days. They are an umbilical cord to navigating life itself. From calculators to the internet, to email, instant messaging, live video streaming, social media, and more. According to the National Telecommunication Union, the number of active mobile broadband subscriptions has increased from 268 million in 2007 to 5.3 billion in 2018. As a result, many questions have surfaced regarding whether this new way of accessing information has an effect on cognitive performance. The fear is that offloading our minds onto our telephones may come at a cognitive cost, and ultimately lead to the loss of what makes us human, our thought and memory. On the other hand, there are also those that feel that this cognitive hybridization is normal, and that we're natural-born cyborgs, and that this tendency to employ new tools and media to complement cognitive processes will continue. My experiment measured whether cell phone penetration and cell phone usage has an effect on cognitive performance. I hypothesized that the higher the cell phone penetration in a country, the lower the cognitive performance would be. I also hypothesized that the higher the cell phone usage, the lower the cognitive performance would be. I used a correlation bivariate test to see if there's an association between cell phone penetration and reading scores, math scores, and science scores. First, let me define a few key terms so you guys can understand exactly what we're measuring here. Cell phone penetration is in reference to how many people actually own a cell phone. For this information, I obtained the cell phone penetration for 33 countries from a 2018 study by Newzoo. Then I collected reading, mathematics, and science scores from the Program for International Student Assessment, which is an international program in 70 nations that aims to measure the students' academic performance on reading, math, and science. In my second study, I measured cell phone usage versus assessment scores. So first the same reading, math, and science scores from PISA. Cell phone usage can be defined as gigabytes used per month per subscription. I collected the cell phone usage from a study by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and I did that for 29 countries. And then, like I said, I also correlated that with the same PISA reading, math, and science scores. I put my data into a graph so we can better visualize it a little bit more. Here along the x-axis, you can see we have cell phone penetration. As the numbers go up, cell phone penetration becomes higher. And then on the y-axis, I have the assessment scores. In this case, you see reading here. As these numbers go up, the reading score becomes higher or better. And there is my data for reading scores for cell phone penetration. Each blue dot represents an individual country. And if you look at this data, you can see that it indicates a significant positive correlation. Therefore, cell phone penetration is associated with higher reading scores. And then I have followed by math scores for Southland Penetration. You can see again here that we have a significant positive correlation. And followed by science, finally. Once again, there is a significant positive correlation there. For my second study, I have along the x-axis gigabytes per month per mobile subscription or the cell phone usage, and then the reading scores or assessment scores will be along the y-axis. Once again, as it goes up would be the more usage, and the higher the rating score on that axis. Here is my data for this. It is not significant, but if you do notice, it is still a positive correlation. And data for math scores versus usage, once again, we did not find significance, but you can still see that it is slightly positive correlation. And science, still not significant, but still going in the positive correlation. So although my results for this study, all three of them didn't reach significance, as a study as a whole, all 6 of my results still moved in a positive correlation. So therefore, we can see that we can predict that that is still a significant effect. What could this mean? Could cell phones actually be helping cognitive performance? Educational institutions are starting to pick up on this trend. Purdue University is one of many educational institutions that is integrating cell phone use in the classroom. They are using a program called Hot Seat, which allows professors to take polls. Students can use their cell phones to access quizzes and even answer questions. So now everybody has a voice. Even in very large lecture rooms, students are able to actively engage in classroom participation. The University of Notre Dame has implemented a similar platform. It is called Poll Anywhere. These new technologies are promoting powerful teaching and engaged learning. Kevin Berry, director of the Caleb Center for Learning at the University of Notre Dame, said, "This is only the beginning of using mobile learning in schools." Society in general is skeptical of the use of mobile phones in the classroom, but hear me out here. Historically, new information media is always met with slight resistance. For example, in the 15th century, Johann Gutenberg introduced the printing press. Many feared this new availability of printed word would possibly induce intellectual laziness. However, the invention of the printing press actually started to revolutionize writing, science, and politics because it allowed for the spread of information and knowledge. All the things that we see and all this progress that we have now and that we enjoy has come from the fact that we have taken these things that we have and we have added innovative technology to make it better. Our calculators are smarter than us in arithmetic already. Our GPS is smarter than us in spatial navigation. And let's face it, Google is smarter than us in long-term memory. The reason why we've made our phones smart is because our phones do not operate like us. It's not thinking like us. It's not becoming distracted. It's not thinking about whether it left the stove on or I should have majored in physics. It's just carrying out the task that we offloaded onto it. There actually might be some topics in science and business that are difficult in terms of our own type of human thinking may need possibly a little extra help. We may not be able to solve them on our own. We may need a 2-step program which invokes these new kinds of thinking that we can work alongside of to solve these really large problems. Just like the recent discovery of the photographed black hole that I have up here. It is now opening a new era for astrophysics, and it would not be made possible without as far as technology has now come. I'm sure you've all read about it on your smartphone by now. Cell phones are really good at terms of productivity and efficiency. And what we're really good at is, well, wasting time. Humans are inherently inefficient. If we welcome these technologies, we will learn to become a team. The world's best heart surgeon is not a doctor. It's not a form of artificial intelligence, but it is the doctor and the artificial intelligence that work together. In the near future, these new forms of technology are going to be something that we will work with instead of against.
I have a question.
Yes.
What makes you say that humans are inherently inefficient? I don't disagree with you. I would just like you to elaborate.
We are innately, we just have so much that we process at all times that I think we get distracted pretty easily. And being able to use technology to offload some of those tasks, I think will kind of help us to not be, to be more efficient, you know?
So I was kind of thinking about India, for example. The broader population in India is just now finally getting on cell phones and online because there's a cell phone company that's found a way to sell them cheaper so that everyone can afford them. And as we know, there's also a correlation between low income or poverty and ill access to education. Do you think that there's a possibility that lack of access to technology or lack of access to education could potentially be a variable in your study that needs to be looked at?
Absolutely. That is something I did look at. It's something I would love to look more into in a future study. Like you said, the world is becoming more and more able to have cell phones. So there's so much more access to it. But I do believe that is a factor, because if you don't have the access to the education systems that we have here, it could absolutely be an effect on that. Good question. Yes.
So setting aside the coming apocalypse when all the satellites are decommissioned, there are two examples. One, the United States Marine Corps, and other in terms of information gathering apparatus worldwide, different agencies. The Marine Corps has recently decided to up the amount of training that their recruits are receiving in terms of using maps and using the sun and stars to actually navigate via maps, because of their increasing reliance on technology to do this, so such that people were not knowing how to use maps, and they're discovering that people who are coming against them are not using smart technology because it's traceable, and so it puts the Marines at a disadvantage. The second intelligence gathering apparatus worldwide is also beginning to revert back to using landlines because they're inherently more secure. How do we figure those sorts of problems? Without question, Google's got a great memory, but what happens when that memory is not available to us? What happens, for Gutenberg, when the dictionary burns and we don't have access to those sorts of things? And sort of thinking backwards, right, in terms of some sort of balance of using it where it's positive, but also recognizing its weaknesses and preparing, students in academic settings or other contexts globally to deal with other alternative situations.
Absolutely, that is very interesting. I did not actually think about that, but that is something that would definitely be a problem if we completely rely on technology for everything. So I could see possibly in certain aspects needing to use, like for the military, for example, if they don't want to be traced or tracked, whatever they're doing, they would not be able to use that form of technology. So I could see that being an implication. Very interesting.
Any research on, you mentioned that the average cell phone user checks their phone like 100 times a day or something?
110 times.
So any research we have, on cell phone users, especially heavy cell phone users, focus, attention, distractibility, ability to sit and read a long article without interruption, that sort of thing?
Yes, there has been lots of studies done specifically on that. And, you know, when I was kind of thinking about it, there are so many other things in the classroom, too, that could cause distraction that people don't bring up when we talk about this debate that's going on right now with whether they should be in the classrooms or not, such as the room temperature or how comfortable your chair is. So there can be so many other different things that could still be distracting us, I believe. I do think that there is a fine line between knowing exactly how to harness the power of what these phones are capable of and using it in the right, you know, to make sure we're not going in the wrong direction.
Right. Yeah, no, I was just thinking like the variables that you looked at were reading scores, you know, math scores, not concentration scores, right? Not like the ability to focus, to problem solve. Maybe we would see those reflected in those cognitive abilities long term or over time. But I'm seeing in classrooms, and this is completely anecdotal, but it appears to be a student's inability to focus, like to read to the end of an article. Like nobody gets the last page anymore, or even the last section. And I have no idea. I just do know that there's some research about attention and focus, right, concentration, and cell phone use. Actually, our brains require the novelty, stimulus, because we're used to checking the Instagram models or something, right? So is that what you're saying?
I definitely think it is, in a sense, rewiring our brains to think differently. I do think that would be a very interesting study to do, maybe as further research on this topic.
I'll actually real quick jump in on that as well, because we had a student that actually looked at that in our advanced lab, Sierra Payne, and what she found, and anybody that's interested can come by the poster session because she will be there at the end of the semester, but what she found was that amongst low users, 20 hours or less per week on social media, the more you used it, the worse your attention span was. So greater use was associated with lower attention. Among high users, it was a reverse trend. Greater use was actually associated with higher attention span. So again, it's a correlational analysis, so we don't know which caused which, but it is interesting that this kind of thing really needs to be delved into, because as these become integrated more and more, we're all going to become heavy users. It's almost like, when you talk about, technology, what happens when this fails, what happens when this fails, you just need to push it back a little bit to see that we rely on technology a lot. Everybody with eyeglasses, what do you do when your eyeglasses fail? It's like, well, you don't navigate very well. Are you a heavy eyeglass user? Well, yeah, when I'm awake, I put them on and I use them, all the time. So I think as this kind of goes further and further and further, we might actually see a fundamental shift in how people react to it as we go from light users to heavy users. And if you want to see the actual data on that poster session, you can call Christy in the psychology department. She'll let you know when. Other than that, we got a little bit of time left. If there's any final questions, yep, real quick.
In your research, did you see how long-term use influences attention? Because I know you're focusing on how it helps with your science or whatever your science is the specific thing. Just because I don't know if you've heard about the 5G that's going to be coming out, and if you've seen anything about how technology has influenced biological reactions. It seems like there's some increasing brain cells, I don't know. But from what I'm reading, I think it was France, they did not allow for the 5G update because they were worried about increases in cancer. Okay. So basically, full circle, did you see anything from long-term use affecting attention, possibly because of biological relations? technology?
So I did not look really at attention in terms of that at all, but it is an interesting point. I have not heard about the 5G. I'd love to look that up and read a little bit more about it. So I didn't really do anything over a time period. I just took the assessment scores and measured those with the overall cell phone penetration and the cell phone usage.
It's kind of a concern that we're looking at just because we all fall asleep with our phones next to our heads, but are we slowly frying our ability to develop, like brain function? So I'm wondering if that can be correlated to that long term.
Do you know if there's research on that?
No, outside of the anecdotal, you'll get cancer from your Nokia kind of stories. Yeah. But, yeah, it just reminds me of all the radioactive pottery that there was in the 70s, right? So I think we survived. But, oh, yeah, no, yeah. All right, so how about a round of applause for all our presenters? And thank